Welcome into BamaCentral's Just a Minute alongside Blake Byler. I'm Katie Windham, and Blake, it has been a crazy last couple weeks of roster news for Alabama basketball. The team got some really positive news on Monday when Grant Nelson announced he would be using his final eligibility to come back for one more year with the Crimson Tide. And after he didn't announced that he was going to the draft at a certain point, it seems like that's where all signs were pointing. But I don't know if that's what we necessarily thought when we left Phoenix a couple weeks ago, that Grant Nelson would be back for another year with this team, especially the way he performed in the NCAA tournament. So just what's the impact of Grant Nelson returning just for this team and this program moving forward?
Yeah, it's a massive boost for Alabama's roster next season. Just the fact that you're able to bring back such a high level contributor that Grant Nelson was from this past season. He averaged 12.6 rebounds a game and really showed you during the NCAA tournament what he could kind of be whenever he's maximized to his potential. We all saw the game that he had against North Carolina in the Sweet 16 to send Alabama to the Elite Eight. He had, I think it was 24 and 12, and really just showed the versatility of his game. He struggled a little bit over the course of the season, but I think a lot of that you can attribute to the fact that he was transferring up from the mid-major level and still adjusting to the physicality, the speed, the strength of high major basketball, of SEC basketball. But by the end of the season, you saw a lot more good games from him, and you saw him kind of come into his own in the NCAA tournament. And so now with him coming back, I think one thing that's really beneficial is the fact that he's going to get to slide up to the four, to the power forward position. It looks like Alabama's recruiting a center really hard, whether that be Cliff Omori from Rutgers or Ugano Onyenso from Kentucky. Alabama's trying to bring in a guy to play the true five. So Nelson played the small ball five a lot this past season, but now he's going to get to kind of play more of his natural position, play with somebody else taking on the duties of the center to guard opposing teams' big men, as well as play kind of more on the interior. So Nelson's going to have more space to work with. He thrived the most in the NCAA tournament when he was playing next to Nick Pringle, starting next to him at the five. And then on top of that, he has another year under his belt, having already adjusted over the course of the season to the high major level. And obviously, we saw the benefits of that by the end of the season in the tournament. But you look at a couple of players around college basketball that have thrived after transferring up and spending a year. Mark Sears, you can look at the jump he took. He was an All-American. Janai Broome over at Auburn was good his first year, but then the second year, this past year, he really took another step forward. And so I'm not saying that Grant Nelson's going to be an All-American or that he's going to be the level of those two guys, but having another year under his belt, playing at such a high level against this kind of competition, it's going to do him wonders, and he should be in line for a really productive and a really strong season. And it's just another returner that Alabama has coming back. And in the last couple of years, we're not really used to having that. Right now, Alabama has both Latrell Wrightsell and Grant Nelson back as key contributors from that Final Four team. Still a lot of pieces left to kind of shift into place as this roster gets closer to being finalized. But Nelson is a huge piece, and he is in line to have a big season next year.
You talked about Latrell coming back to Grant coming back. We still don't really know about Mark Sears, but we've seen in past years the teams that have NCAA tournament success are the teams that have older players, and that's what Alabama is going to have this year. And then you also talked about him playing his more natural position at the four. Not only is that something he's probably more comfortable in and more well suited for, but I think a lot of times this year we saw Grant Nelson get in foul trouble because he was having to play the five and just draw fouls down in the paint trying to defend an opposing team's best player, and so that should also kind of help that problem. But like you said, there's also going to be a couple more pieces to fall into place, waiting on that waiting on that Mark Sears decision. Jaren Stevenson entered the draft. The expectation is that he'll come back, but he might as well test the waters. But you never know for sure. We thought Charles Bediako would come back, and then also kind of finalizing that center position. But Blake will for sure have you covered with all that stuff over the next couple days and weeks. But that will wrap up BamaCentral's Just a Minute. Thank you so much for watching.